PMS, pregnancy, menopause. Each stage of womanhood has its unique challenges. That's why Highlands Naturals' new women's multivitamins are formulated with essential daily nutrients, plus targeted support for your life stage. Facing PMS? There's a Highlands Multi for that. Navigating pregnancy and morning sickness? That too. In the throes of menopause, our formula is here to support you through hot flashes and skin changes. Gone are the days of juggling multiple supplements or guessing what you might need. With Highlands Naturals, it's one multivitamin with daily essential nutrients and science-backed ingredients to support you. An all-in-one wellness solution to lighten the load for women? Highlands Naturals is here for it. Find your multi at Amazon or Highlands.com. That's HYLANDS.com. Highlands Naturals. We're here for it.
Introducing the Soul Collection by Brilliant Earth, the global leader in ethically sourced fine jewelry. From pave rings to star-studded bracelets, each piece made with recycled gold or silver and beyond conflict-free diamonds embodies Brilliant Earth's commitment to design, craftsmanship, quality, sustainability, and transparency. Drawing inspiration from the warmth and energy of the sun, Soul is more than jewelry. It's an expression of your personality. The Soul Collection, exclusively at Brilliant Earth. Be light, be you.
If you really like this episode, please support our podcast by going to patreon.com/truecrimewives and get lots of great extras.
Good Wife's Guide to True Crime. We discuss crimes that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey, good evening, everyone. We're back for part 2 of the Oakland County Child Murders. And we mentioned in part 1 that a few months ago, we had the pleasure of interviewing author J. Reuben Appelman about these mysterious cases. And he is the author of The Kill Jar, Obsession, Descent, and Hunt for Detroit's Most Notorious Serial Killer. His investigation in this case was the springboard for a series on ID called Children of the Snow, which he is also the executive producer of. If you haven't already, head over and listen to that interview to get some extra bonus details about this case.
There's new information tonight about a man who was once a key suspect in the Oakland County Child Killer case.
That's right. A search warrant just made public shows the lie detector test that was used to clear the suspect decades ago wasn't as accurate as police once thought.
7 Action News investigator Heather Catallo is here now with details. Heather, what do you know?
Well, this was the search warrant we tried to get from the court years ago, but detectives kept it hidden until now. The search was for the home of a man who police once thought was a great lead in this case. Detectives are now looking at other suspects, though. But for the father of one of the victims, the details in this affidavit have him wondering if his son could have been spared.
1 month before 11-year-old Timothy King was abducted from Birmingham in 1977, the Michigan State Police were giving this man a lie detector test. King was the last of the 4 known victims of the Oakland County Child Killer. The first victim was Mark Stebbins, abducted from Ferndale. During the polygraph examination, detectives asked Christopher Brian Bush if he'd had anything to do with the Stebbins kidnapping and murder. The trooper administering the polygraph concluded that Bush was being truthful, and even though he was facing charges in other molestation cases, he was let go.
We got a 4-time charged pedophile who's put back on the street, and if he was involved, he should have been in jail, and he shouldn't have been out the night Timmy was abducted.
Barry King is Timmy King's father. He says the newly released search warrant affidavit shows that 3 polygraph experts in 2008 took another look at the Bush lie detector test results and determined that he wasn't being truthful.
It finally confirms what we've been told by people, that 3 experienced polygraphers looked at this rookie's polygraph results and contradicted his conclusions.
Police reports show that Bush committed suicide in 1978 inside this home in Bloomfield Township. Using the information about the real Bush polygraph results and other details, detectives searched the home several years ago. Officials from the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office say none of the hairs or fibers found during that search connected the murdered children to Bush. In fact, DNA found on both Stebbins and King are actually linked to a totally different suspect in the case. But Barry King still thinks other details in this search warrant affidavit are critical to the investigation, including this. Bush told detectives back in '77 that he had picked up children from the same locations in Ferndale, Royal Oak, and Berkeley, where the kids in the Oakland County case had disappeared from.
He picked 3 locations in Oakland County where he says he picked up children, and they're the same 3 locations where Stebbins, Robinson, and Mihalik were picked up. I don't think it's coincidence.
Barry King is convinced that Christopher Bush played some sort of role in his son's disappearance and murder, but once again, prosecutors say there's absolutely no DNA evidence tying Christopher Bush to the case, but they continue to aggressively follow all leads in the hopes of solving this tragic mystery, hopefully someday.
Hopefully someday. You gotta keep your fingers crossed that they will one day.
Hey folks, it's time to grab your glass of wine because Fancy, Tori, and Christina are about to serve up another true crime dish. Hey folks, so you're about to hear a new co-host of ours, Tori Johnson. And Tori has been with me, Fancy, as a partner in Mad Ginger Entertainment for about 6 years. And she was started off with us when we began to do this podcast, but because of some family issues and some health issues, she hasn't been around. But you're going to go ahead and see and hear her a little bit more as we get into season 3 and beyond of The Good Wives Guide to True Crime. So please welcome Tori to our show.
The Oakland County Child Killer's case involves an unknown person or people who were responsible for the murders of at least 4 children that we know of, 2 girls and 2 boys, in Oakland County, Michigan in 1976 and 1977. We got into the details of the victims and their tragic murders in the last episode. They are Mark Stebbins, 12 years old, Jill Robinson, 12 years old, Christine Marie Mihalik, 10 years old, and Timothy King, 11 years old. 4 young, innocent children that suffered and died at the hands of a monster or monsters who are still unknown. Tonight, we'll talk about what happened after the children were found. We'll talk about the suspects and all the crazy things that have happened up until now.
Yeah, this case though, I know that we have 4 kids here that they focused on, but from the research that I'm doing, I've actually been talking to quite a few people that say that they were approached by the same people, and that they there is an idea of who is the Oakland County Child Killer or killers. But I mean, it's not been proven, but there's a lot of compelling evidence for it. But the fact that I'm getting more and more people coming forward, I really do believe this is a bigger story than just these 4 children, even more than just, North Fox Island, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But I think that this is a huge, huge thing that happened back then. And it's still probably happening today in other realms, not the child killer still being around, but more people doing stuff like this in that area. So
I definitely agree. In the research that I've done, it does seem like there were a lot of attempts that there were kids that got away or it didn't go through as planned. So I wonder how much deeper this case actually does go than what we know. Yeah.
It's a hard case, and it's a really dark, deep case. Like, this is, it's sad, and I really do believe that it was a solvable case. And I think that because of some of the people that were involved, they looked the other way,
Right. It's like every time you look at it, there's just another alleyway full of details and suspects and possible victims. It's just on everywhere you look, there's a whole new pathway to go.
Mm-hmm. I even talked with somebody yesterday that was telling me that this was connected to some cases in Australia. And I haven't got to run that down yet to find out how truthful that is. I mean, there was a lot of evidence that they were showing me and trying to tell me, and I have to sift through it. We're definitely going to do these 3 episodes, but in season 3, I think we're going to try and look into this more, either here on the podcast or over on YouTube at Murder by Design, because there's just so much more information out there. And it's one of those cases, kind of like the Gypsy case, like every time you think you've hit that bottom, there's another thing that comes around and goes, oh yeah, you thought you got to the end. No. So
yeah, we see that a lot. We love those cases.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the crazy cases that we end up, so far down a rabbit hole. It's 3:00 in the morning and I'm like, oh shit, I need to sleep. But
yeah.
we'll get into it tonight, and we're going to go through mostly a little bit about the investigation, and then we're going to talk a lot about the different suspects. Now, these are just the 4 suspects or 5 suspects that have really been focused on. Children of the Snow focused on them. J. Reuben Appelman focused on him in his actual book as well. And so we're focusing on them because they are the most likely of sources, for being suspects. But I truly believe it goes even bigger and deeper than this. At one point in time, one of the family members had said that they think that there's up to 15 or 16 people involved in this, which is just scary. So
if you look at how big it is, it's not really surprising that there's that many people involved, just because it would take a lot more than 1 or 2 to reach everything that is wrapped up in this case.
And I was watching, I was thinking about it and watching Children of the Snow, and they were talking about how before the internet, this is how they ran. Pedophile rings ran in circles like this, with them being in contact in a specific area, because they didn't have the ability to go out and put it out there, all over the place. And, there wasn't a internet like forum board or the dark net or anything like that. So they had to work within a circle, and then that circle worked into another circle that worked into another circle. So, I mean, it definitely, I think this searches far and wide, and it probably covers way more, other areas than just this area. But it's I think it's going to be, once we even dig into this more, I think we'll uncover even more stuff. But let's just get into it tonight, guys. And thank you for tuning in and listening with us as we discuss the Oakland County Child Murders Part 2.
Don't go anywhere. The Good Wives will be right back.
If you've been listening to our podcast for some time, then you've probably noticed that there's been some different changes going on. And that's because we've recently switched over to our new hosting platform using Buzzsprout. And we love it. It could not have been a smoother transition. Buzzsprout has made it super simple and gave us amazing features we weren't getting before. So if you've been thinking of hosting a podcast, or you're looking for a new host, then we totally recommend giving Buzzsprout a try. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Your show can be online and listed in all the major podcast directories like Apple, Spotify, Google, and even Pandora within minutes of finishing your recording. So join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. And if you follow the link in the show notes, that lets Buzzsprout know we sent you. And it helps you get a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan. And it helps support our show.
In every episode, we like to serve up a special dish from the state that our crime takes place. So here's our resident Cajun Mama Ty to tell you what our true crime dish of the week is.
Hey guys, it's me, Cajun Mama Ty, here with another recipe of I am coming to you from Louisiana. And as the Good Wives continue their discussion on the Oakland child murders, we have a recipe for Chef John's classic macaroni salad. So let's head back to the Good Wives as they talk about this episode, and I'll come back to you and give you the recipe and the ingredients and the directions. See you later.
Well, after the discovery of Kristen Mihalik's body, authorities noticed similarities shared by her case and those of Mark Stebbins and Jill Robinson. And so reports were released warning the public that a serial killer was probably operating in Oakland County area. The Michigan State Police led a group of law enforcement officials from 13 communities in the formation of a task force devoted solely to the investigation into the killings of these 3 children. And so, I mean, the community was aware before Timothy King, the last one, went missing, and the parents had even told, Timothy's parents have even come out and told him, hey, don't get in any cars, da-da-da-da-da. So it has even been suggested that possibly either one of the killers or one of the procurers was either a police officer or a fireman, or at least wore a police officer or fireman's uniform, like, got one, or something that would have made these kids feel safe with this person, because there's not like a scuffle where people are seeing a child thrown into a van and raced off. There's nothing like that. And these kids were taken in broad daylight. So I definitely think there had to be something going on that made them feel at ease before, and it's hard back then. Even the different jurisdictions didn't talk, they didn't communicate. So you could have something in one county and the other county never even know about it. And that's why it took, it took some discovery for the third child to be even linked to the first child. That took some time, because they weren't talking. They didn't know, and this is another thing that was happening in this case. They were dumping them they were picking them up in one county and dumping them in another. 8 different counties were involved in this whole thing, with just 4 children missing, supposedly.
That's interesting. I think we hear about that in a lot of cases where there's a lack of communication between different areas in the same place, and they may not know what's going on. And later on they'll find the link, and like you said, it'll be spread out over 8 counties, 10 counties, and it's all connected. So I think we see that often in cases like this, when there's either missing people or, when there's like a serial killer on the loose, and they start to put the pieces together, all those connections start to come out.
Right. Well, we even saw that in the serial rapist and serial killer, the Golden State Killer. That was what he was doing. He was going, from county to county and spacing it out during the 70s at the same time, the same period of time, 73 to 80 something, and so same situation where they weren't linking them together, because they just weren't communicating and they weren't seeing a pattern because they weren't looking. And then we still have a disconnect between local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and the FBI. Even currently today, it happens. It takes a lot for those agencies to work together, and I don't understand that necessarily. I understand, they want credit, they want to be the ones to put the tag on them, whatever. But when you're talking about people's lives, especially children's lives, there's got to be a better way to communicate between these agencies, wouldn't you think, guys?
It's funny. Before I got involved with the podcast and we actually started, working on these cases, I would read a lot of crime novels and nonfiction and fiction, and I would read these things between, like you said, the local police and the state and the federal, and it would be like, okay, this agent is hiding this information from the officers that they're supposed to be working with. And in the books that were, like actual fiction books, I'd be like, well, that can't really happen. Like, these people are working together. They're not hiding things from each other. But then you realize in real life, like, there is that level of, well, this is my case and this was my case first, so I'm not going to give you the info that I found. We're going to solve this case, not you. And it's like crazy when you think, like, these are, especially in a case like this, like, these are children's lives that were taken, and you're you're not sharing everything you have to find the killer. It's crazy when you think about it like that.
Well, we've talked with a couple different of our experts and found out that, there's a lot of technology is not available to lots of different agencies, and some of them don't even know some of this stuff is out there to do. So it's kind of crazy with that too, of thinking like Karen Greer and Cheryl McCollum, when we were talking to them about the Honey Malone case, Karen found out that the department had no idea how to use a specific technology that they're now using to be able to, they've gotten leads on 20 different cases, and it's that they weren't informed. They didn't even know about the technology. And so she brought them in and had like a symposium right there in their studio to show them, hey, look, this is something you can be using and you need to be, and so I think that plays into this too. But back then they didn't have, a lot of this stuff. But even the current cases we're seeing, now that technology though can also help solve cases like this if the counties and the investigators and the DA and everybody is open to it, because I think a lot of times they don't want to admit that they've made a mistake or that they didn't do something, or that something could have been done differently to solve a case. Because even without like all the technological advances, this case was big enough that I think that there should have been a much easier resolution to this. So, but anyway, after Timothy King disappeared, a woman shared with police that she had seen a young boy fitting Timothy's description on a skateboard, talking to a man in a blue gremlin in the parking lot of the drugstore he had been at. And the police released a composite sketch and spoke to every gremlin owner in the area. Now, I know in Children of the Snow, Corey Williams, the investigator Corey Williams, says, that first of all, he doesn't even believe the gremlin was the correct car, because Timothy's brother actually saw the car there parked still in the same spot in the parking lot much later than that, and nobody even knew that. But then on top of that, people can see a car and they can completely mess up looking at what they saw. They may have seen it in the parking lot and then saw another blue car and blue gremlin, blue Pontiac, whatever. Even cars back then, a lot of them looked alike, in like the Le Mans looks like the Bonneville, or whatever it is, so there could have been other different factors in that. So pulling every gremlin owner over, that I applaud them for doing that, but I don't know how accurately that was helping. I wonder if the efforts could have been put somewhere else.
And they even went so far as to, instead of having to have a reason to pull somebody over, they said, I'm just going to waive it. You see a blue gremlin, pull it over, search it. And
right. So, and I'll take the heat later.
Right, exactly. So rights were waived just to search gremlins that they weren't even sure 100% was the right vehicle.
Right. Right.
And that's crazy going off of just one witness. Like if you ask if a car drives by and 10 people are on the block and you ask them, what kind of car was that just drove by? You're probably going to get like 8 different answers.
Oh, yeah.
So to go by one person, like, oh, yeah, it was a blue gremlin. And it's like, okay, well, now every blue gremlin we have to stop. Especially, right. We also know eyewitness accounts are usually unreliable.
Yeah, they're the least reliable of all evidence because, like you just said, you can put 10 people in the same scene and they're all going to see something completely different. If you put me in a scene and you ask me about a car, I will have no idea. I might tell you it was blue and long. That's all I can tell you. Blue
me
and
too.
Long.
I'm not a car person at all.
I don't know a Le Mans from a Bonneville from a Volkswagen. I just don't. And so, my husband, he might be able to tell you the make, the year, the headlights, the whole damn thing about it, but not me. I can't do that. I'm not going to be able to tell you what it was, unless gremlins are a kind of very specific car. But the fact of the matter is like you said, that car could have been seen in the parking lot. And then, and maybe he was standing near it and then he got in a totally different car, and but the person's in their mind because the gremlin stood out to them versus a Le Mans or, whatever standing out to them. That's what they're going to think of. Oh no, I saw him by the gremlin. He got in the gremlin. No, he didn't get in the gremlin. He got in something else. Who knows, and there's been eyewitnesses that came forward and said different things in the Mihalik case, where, I saw her do this, well, I saw her do that. And then other people obviously say, well, I saw her walking home after that, so that couldn't have happened. I saw her over here. I saw her leave 7-Eleven. Well, I didn't see her leave 7-Eleven. So, when you put that into perspective, and some people may even be thinking about a totally different day. That was one of the things that we brought up in when we were researching and we're working on this head-to-head that we're doing on the Scott Peterson case was, there were eyewitness testimonies that said, well, I saw her after supposed this time, but how do you know? Do you really know when somebody comes and asks you 2-3 weeks ago, do you know, even years later sometimes, do you know whether it was actually 8:30 a.m. or 10:30 a.m.? I don't think you do.
Introducing the Soul Collection by Brilliant Earth, the global leader in ethically sourced fine jewelry. Designed for everyday elegance, This exclusive new collection features timeless rings and bracelets, made with recycled gold and silver, and adorned with beyond conflict-free diamonds to celebrate your unique style and story. Energizing and iconic, the Soul Collection reflects what makes Brilliant Earth a beacon in the industry. Recognizable design, careful craftsmanship, and an unwavering commitment to quality, sustainability, and transparency. Drawing inspiration from the warmth and energy of the sun, Soul is more than jewelry. It's an expression of your personality. Find the pieces that resonate with you and discover a radiant addition to your forever collection. The Soul Collection, available exclusively at Brilliant Earth. Be light, be you.
Home is a place to laugh, learn, and play, and a place where everyone should always feel safe. That's why at Kidda, we believe that protecting children from house fires is everyone's cause. This Fire Safety Month, join us in our mission to help families everywhere learn about fire safety so we can help keep children safe at home and ensure lots more laughs in the future. Learn about the importance of smoke alarms and creating your own home fire safety plan at cause4alarm.org.
That was always a big issue I had with the Casey Anthony trial because by the time that trial happened, a while had passed, and her father took the stand and was like, I remember the last time I saw her, she was wearing this and she had this book bag and these shoes. And I'm like, come on, dude, the last time you saw her, you had no idea that it was going to be the last time you saw her. Why would you remember? Like, I'm lucky if I remember what I was wearing 2 days ago. You're talking about 2 years ago. You remember that moment.
And that little girl had been missing for how long? It's different if they had gone missing that morning, and by the evening you're like, yes, when she walked out of the house, she was wearing a pink backpack and a purple shirt and, you know, whatever. Then I could totally, and her hair was in ringlets that day, you know.
It was it was more than 30 days before they even knew that she was missing.
Right.
And
I dress my 2-year-old every day. I couldn't tell you what he's wearing today. I think it's a blue shirt. I think.
Right. And when you're talking about 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, I don't know what my kids are wearing at that point in time. Like, my daughter is 17. I have no clue what that kid leaves the house in. Like, I can tell you what she looks like, you know. And if I drop her off and it's something notable or it's a new shirt or something like that, I might know. But seriously, it's really hard to think about that. Your mind can play tricks on you as to what you're actually remembering one way or the other, you know. So eyewitness testimony, and we talk about this all the time, is so unreliable. And it's really hard to base a case off of that, you know. But investigators created a profile based on witness description of the man seen talking to King. He was a white male, aged between 25 and 35, with a dark complexion, shaggy hair, and sideburns, who had a job that apparently gave him some freedom of movement and made him appear trustworthy, like I said before, to children, because he was familiar with the area and could keep children captive for long periods of time without rousing neighbors' suspicions. So, you know, like, these kids didn't just go missing on, you know, Monday and be found on Tuesday or Wednesday. One of them, you know, was kept 19 days.
Like, definitely somebody who was, I mean, almost, like, didn't they call them the babysitter killer at one point? Because they were found to be clean and well kept when they were found after they had been held captive. So this person was obviously paying attention. I know there was it Timothy or was it Mark? I can't remember which one, where the parents said when he comes home, we're going to give him Kentucky Fried Chicken. And when they did the autopsy, they found that his last meal was Kentucky Fried Chicken. So this was somebody that was paying attention, you know, to the media, to the news, what they were saying about him. And that's
well, yeah, he was watching. I mean, obviously, he was a very organized killer. This was not a disorganized killer at all. He was the person, whoever was procuring them, was definitely very, very organized. And that's why I say I believe that it's more than one person. I don't know if I am 100% convinced that it is the 5 that we're going to talk about tonight. I think there might be way more than that and in there. And I definitely think that this was, with the different counties being brought in and all of that, I think that there was a selling of these kids from one person to another person to another person, and then they ended up, wherever they were.
Well, I also think that with it being different counties, I think that might have been on purpose, because at that time you knew that the different police departments were not communicating. So they were able to get away with it longer, just because they were able to spread it out over different areas and different jurisdictions that weren't going to necessarily speak to each other. So there's really no telling how soon it started, and whether the 4 victims that we know of were the first 4 victims, or the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th victims, or, because we don't know where it was spread out, if it was going on beforehand, and that they just happened to link these 4.
Right, because there were other cases in the area that were very similar, but that did not get linked together for whatever reason, But I think this, like I said, very organized group. They knew what they were doing, and they taunted the police and the parents over and over again, which I think is even more sick. Like, you take the kid, you do what you're going to do, whatever, okay. But to taunt the police, to taunt the parents, that's even more cruel, in what they're doing. So, but investigators responded to over 18,000 tips, which resulted in about 24 arrests on unrelated charges, and the discovery of a multi-state child pornography ring operating on North Fox Island in Lake Michigan, which we're going to be talking about in further detail in episode 3, because that island is a story all of its own. The task force was unable to make much headway in the investigation, disbanding in December 1978, with the investigation being turned over to the state police. So this has become back and forth into cold case, not cold case, closed case, open case, trying to investigate this. And it's still an ongoing investigation as of today. And all of this happened in 1976 and 77. So, it's just, it's way bigger than anyone has actually touched on, I think, so far, especially considering all the different people that have reached out just in the last couple of days since I've been really looking into additional cases with this that I think might be connected. So many people have reached out and said, well, I was approached by the same car. I've seen the composite sketch, and that's the same guy that tried to abduct me. I was walking home. Even Jay Rubin believes, Jay Rubin Appleman believes that he was a suspected a victim, that they were trying to get him. And he, his was another person that they found later, but I think it's all tied together. I really feel like this is a huge ring of pedophilia and sex trafficking of children, and I think we'll talk to Stephen David Lampley a little bit about this case coming up. We'll try and get him to talk, because he was, not only was he a homicide and SVU detective, but he specialized in child pornography rings and sex trafficking of children. So I think we'll definitely try to pull him in on it. And I'm trying to get some of the other people that were, tried to be kidnapped or had experiences that were similar to what these kids experienced. I'm trying to get some of them to come on and talk as well. So that's something that we're working on. But the investigation, it stalls and it never really goes anywhere. In fact, by the end of December of 1978, they had no suspects. They still had absolutely no one really in their sights as to who this really was. They had some barely basic ideas. They talked to different people, but they'd ruled out these people. And I don't think that they should have. I really don't think that they should have ruled out as some of the people that we see that we're going to be talking about as we get into the different suspects in this.
Talking about the task force that disbanded. And I believe one of the things that I looked at when I was researching the case, the task force actually went into one of the suspect's houses, and they found that he'd committed suicide inside his house. And almost within a couple of days of that, is when the task force disbanded. And there are some people involved that have done research that think that it was not a suicide at all, and
Right.
that's why they haven't even bothered really looking anymore. They think they got their person and basically took care of it themselves.
Yeah, but I mean, it's clear that this is not one person. So yes, maybe that person took care of himself, but if it's there's a lot of question as to whether he committed suicide. Because you can talk about how he committed suicide was by gunshot wound, and the normal place to either kill yourself is to put the gun right against the barrel, the barrel right against your forehead or right underneath your chin. And that's not how this was done. It was a very odd way for a person to shoot themselves. So it's a suspect of even whether or not that was, suicide, and more likely that the rest of the ring knew he was talking or was about to be flipped, be really kind of brought in and would have to give some information, and they took him out, but that's again just it's maybe proof of that, but it's there's a lot to say that it could be a good case for that, but then again, it's never been really looked into hard by law enforcement. Corey Williams, who is working on the case now, has looked into a lot of it, and I have a lot of respect for what he's trying to do. And I do think that he has some really good leads going on. And again, we're reaching out to several different people as we continue to look into this to kind of talk a little bit more in depth than just what's out there right now. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Don't go anywhere. The Good Wives will be right back.
What if you could be a true crime detective right from the comfort of your own home? Dispatch is an interactive serial mystery that unfolds over several months. Imagine the experience of an escape room in your own home, a new kind of escape called Dispatch. It's a subscription box that's a step apart from everyday entertainment. Better than a book, more engaging than television, think of it as an immersive mystery where you wear the detective hat. The story begins with your first delivery, or dispatch, if you will. In it, you'll find physical clues that lead you to the web and back to the real world to unravel a mysterious crime. Grab a friend, the whole family, and your thinking cap, and get ready to put your heads together for one mind-bending ride, as additional details are revealed with every package. Head over to our Instagram at www.instagram.com/truecrimewives and click on the link in our bio, then choose the dispatch button to start your own true crime adventure today.
Hey guys, it's me, Cajun Mama Ty. I'm back giving you the recipe for our classic macaroni salad by Chef John. Macaroni salad is used a lot in the Cajun community as a side dish, usually at a barbecue or at any type of family gathering. A lot of times it's used because it's a cheap and easy way to make a cool side dish. So let's go ahead and talk about the ingredients. So the ingredients are mayonnaise, white vinegar, Dijon mustard, salt and pepper, cayenne pepper, white sugar, celery, bell pepper, onions, carrots, green onions, jalapenos, poblano peppers, macaroni, elbow macaroni. I like to use spiral macaroni instead of elbow macaroni, but you can use either one. So to start off, what we're going to do is in a bowl, you're going to whisk 1 cup of mayonnaise, the vinegar, the Dijon mustard, salt, pepper, cayenne pepper, and you're going to blend it together with a wired whisk. You want to stir in your celery, your red bell pepper, your carrots, onions, jalapenos, poblano peppers, and we're going to take that and we're going to put it in the refrigerator and have it rest in there while we get the rest of the recipe ready. You're going to get a large pot. We're going to put some water in it, You want to boil your either elbow noodles or your spiral noodles. I like to use spiral noodles. I even like to use the multicolored spiral noodles, the different color spiral noodles, because that also makes a good macaroni salad. So you're going to ball those, and you want to cook them to where they're cooked all the way through. Ball it for about 8 to 10 minutes. You're going to drain it. Once you drain the macaroni, you want to leave it set for about 5 minutes. You want to make sure that all the moisture is out of it. You want to put it in a large bowl and make sure that the macaroni is all separated. You don't want it to be sticky. Then you go ahead and you pour the dressing over the macaroni and you whisk everything together. You just mix everything together, and that's how you serve it. It is a cold dish, but it's okay if it if it gets a room temperature, but it's normally served cold. So you'd put it back in the refrigerator until it's time to go ahead and serve it. So that is an easy, cheap recipe for a classic dish used in the Cajun community, and that is macaroni salad. Let's head back to the Good Wives as they continue talking about this case. If you have any suggestions on a recipe or a French word, please contact Cajun Mama Ty at Cajun Mama Ty, CajunMommaTie at gmail.com. Drop me a line. Let me know how you feel about the podcast, about me doing the recipes, and if you have any suggestions or any comments or anything, go ahead and drop me a line and we'll go ahead and talk about it here on the podcast. Let's head back to the Good Wives.
Ty, another great recipe. For the full recipe that was shared tonight, join us at our exclusive membership club at www.patreon.com/truecrimewives.
So there's something really strange that happened in this case. A few weeks after Timothy King was killed, a psychiatrist that was working with the task force gets a letter. Now, this letter was a mess. It was written anonymously, and it was signed with the name Allen. It was filled with grammatical errors, and the author claimed that the Oakland County Child Killer was a man named Frank. So Allen claimed that he and Frank had served in the Vietnam War, and that he was now Frank's S&M sex slave.
My God.
And the letter went on to explain that Frank, the Oakland County Child Killer, was traumatized because he had killed children. And he had also supposedly taken revenge on wealthier people because he wanted the rich to suffer for sending the troops to Vietnam. Now, this Allen additionally claimed that he had gone along with Frank while he was out looking for boys to kill. And Allen was sorry for that, and he was afraid. In the letter, he wrote that he was suicidal, he was in danger, and he was going insane. So in this letter, he asked the psychiatrist to respond to him by printing code words in the following week's Sunday paper. And he wanted immunity from prosecution, and he was willing to give the doctor photographic evidence in exchange for immunity. So, of course, the psychiatrist and the task force, they were interested in who Allen and Frank were and if anything in this letter was true. So the psychiatrist makes arrangements to meet Allen at a bar, but when the time comes, Allen never shows up and he's never heard from again.
Wow. And you know what? you could just throw this out as some crazy person, but when you get into some of the people in this case and who they are and what they did, there is a good case for this being somewhat true. Do I think it's all true? No, I don't. But I think it could definitely be Gunnels. He was a 16, 15-year-old kid that they had molested, and then he became part of this ring, and we're going to talk about that a little later. We're going to talk about the pedo ring and who the different players in that were. And when we get into North Fox Island, we'll get into a little bit more players in that. But I definitely think that this could have been, Gunnels. So yeah, I definitely think that this could be Vincent James Gunnels. He was a kid who got sucked into this and was a victim first and then became part of the perpetrator, and that does happen in these cases. Unfortunately, it's sad because sometimes kids are molested and then they become the molesters, or, children are abused and they become the abusers.
Right. That tends to happen a lot, that the cycle just continues over and over because they don't know how else to express what they've gone through and the trauma they've dealt with. And a lot of times because of that, they feel kind of a connection to their abuser that they don't know how to sever, and so they move forward, and when their abuser says, okay, now you help me find the next boy, they don't know how to stop it, and so they do.
I think Gunnels was probably, they talk about the fact that the kids were willing to go with somebody or do something, and it was someone that was they trusted. Who better to be trustworthy than another kid? So if they knew Gunnels, or he was just some 15, 16-year-old kid saying, hey, I've got whatever, come, hey, let's hang out, or let's do whatever. I think that he might have definitely been a good suspect for being the procurer in this, because they do that with prostitution rings with women too. Like they send out a young girl to get other young girls. Sex traffickers, they do that. Because it's disarming to a child or another woman. Like if you're approached by a man, of course you're going to run away. If you're being told there's a serial killer, no one's thinking a serial killer is 15 years old. Obviously there have been some, but generally you don't think of another child. So I think he definitely could have been a case for that. And I think that this letter could really have been written by him, and he put some things in there to kind of not throw him off, but because he couldn't admit exactly who he was, and so this letter, to me, I wouldn't just count this letter out as ramblings of a crazy person. I definitely think this has some keys to the kingdom in here, so to speak.
I agree with you on that 100%.
Yeah. So it's now been suspected that there is not just one killer, but yet a ring of killers involved in these murders, and possibly several more that were never attributed to the Oakland County killers. Barry King, Timothy's father, alleges that up to 15 people may be responsible for the killing of these children. So we're going to get into who those people are. So the first one is Archibald Edward Sloan. And Archie Edward Sloan was a known child molester in the area that became a person of interest because hairs were found in his 1966 Pontiac Bonneville that matched hairs found on the bodies of Timothy and Mark. However, the hairs did not match Sloan himself. So, and we're going to talk about who those hairs matched. And so one witness claimed that Timothy was abducted by two men, one in his 20s and one appearing to fit the description of John Wayne Gacy. So Gacy was brought up in this case at one point in time as a suspect. Gacy was supposedly in Michigan at the time, but his DNA was not a match to the DNA found on the victims' bodies. Now, it doesn't mean that he wasn't involved in some way. It just means that there wasn't anything concrete to really link him at the time. And I think that's interesting that Gacy gets brought into this, and if people are running, these men did have connections to Gacy. And if that's the case, then it definitely could have been even more sinister than what we're seeing right here on the surface, because bringing that type of serial killer into this, somebody so prolific,
Calling all night owls. When you've got the after dark munchies, Amigos is here for you to satisfy your late night cravings. Put your hunger to bed with Amigos' new 8 to close specials. Only $5 for 2 crisp meat burritos, 2 cheesy burritos, or 1 of each, for those who can't decide. You heard right. 2 of our favorite late night sellers, crisp meats or cheesies for just $5. Head to Amigos, where flavor never sleeps.
At Baker's, we know the minute a tomato is picked, the fresh timer starts. The sooner we get our produce to you, the fresher it is. That's why we've shortened the time from harvest to home for our tasty tomatoes, strawberries, and salads. So no matter how you shop, you have more time with your fresh produce. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
It ups the game, you know, and this is, again, they were running in this type of ring at the time, you know.
And I think that a lot of times they're going to tend to run in the same circles. So it's not unheard of for that, you know, it's not beyond the realm of possibilities.
When you think about it, you know, when you think about it, people that are similar flock together, you know, like the 3 of us and our fourth partner, Colleen, we all have a love of true crime, you know, so we hang out, we talk about true crime. That's what we do. You know, we're like, hey, did you see this case? Hey, have you talked about this? Did you hear about that thing that's going on with Wayfair? Did you hear, even if it's crazy, we're like, hey, did you hear about it? It's kind of fucking weird, right? And we're going to talk about the Wayfair thing here coming up this week on an Instagram live. You know, I have some thoughts about it and I'm going to share those. But like, we talk about those things. So if you're a person, you know, if you like rock climbing, who are going to be your friends? Other people who like rock climbing, right? So if you're a freaking sicko pedophile, who's going to be your friends? Other people that are sicko pedophiles. Like it makes sense, you know, like, you know, so that's the first one. Sloan is, he's kind of the outside part of this ring. As we go in further and further, you see how the one person, you know, there's one person who really stands out as the main guy in this. But they all have a connection to that one main guy. But another person that's in this ring is Ted, and I think it's Lamborghini. I think it's Lamborghini, but
it's Lamborghini.
Lamborghini. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Lamborghini.
Lamborghini.
But
I can only think of Lamborghini every time I see it.
I know. Right. Which is why the name stood out so much to me, because it wasn't pronounced the same as Lamborghini, even though it's what it's, you know, it looks like when you look at it.
Right.
And I think because so many people couldn't say his name, that's why he also went by Ted Orr. Right. So another suspect was Theodore Lamborghini. He also was called Ted Orr, and it actually took a while to figure out who he was because he went by Ted Orr, and they couldn't find a Ted Orr. But he was also another suspected child molester and was also thought to have been involved in a child pornography ring in the 1970s. He was a retired auto worker. Police in Parma Heights arrested him on March 27th of 2007. And investigators told Detroit news stations that he was the top suspect.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, but he is very key in leading to who really comes forward as the main suspect. He sits as a top suspect for a little while, but he doesn't, you know, sit as the main top suspect as we go forward. But how's this for being guilty? So Lamborghini pled guilty to 15 counts of sex-related charges involving young boys instead of agreeing to a plea deal just to avoid being forced to a polygraph test regarding the Oakland County child murders. He also refused an offer of reduced sentence if he took this polygraph. So clearly he knows something and does not want to have to talk about it. And while back then, even back then, and still today, you know, most of the time polygraphs are not admissible in court. They are very good tools in getting information that then can be used to start the investigation in a specific way, or find a specific person So they're a great tool, but the fact that he didn't want to take a polygraph, that is extremely suspicious.
Right. And he's a little bit not shady, but he tries to be slick even now. When he was arrested and arraigned, there's a video clip where the judge reads off his address and says, "Is this your address?" And his response is, "Well, actually, no, my address is the jail. But I guess if you want to get technical, that was my address before I was put in jail."
God.
So instead of even saying just a simple, "Yes, that was my last known address," it's, "Well, no, technically my address is the jail. So I guess really you can't link that to me." And
wow, what a dick.
What a dick. And he was just kind of shrugging his shoulders through it like, no big deal, whatever. You've got your information wrong. What else do you have wrong about me? Kind of was the attitude that he put off with that one little interaction.
Right.
It's crazy. They were just willing, like, he refused an offer of a reduced sentence just for taking the polygraph. Like, that right. Says everything right there.
Well, yeah, and I think, they were basically like, I think if they're offering to give you a reduced sentence, they're offering to give you, something else in exchange for information or for you taking this polygraph, they would have been offering you some sort of at least some amount of immunity or a lesser sentence if you plead out to what happened with these 4 kids, or whatever. But no, he decides he's only going to plead out to these sex-related charges. That makes me wonder, like, there's some bigger names in this that we'll get into when we talk about North Fox Island. It makes me wonder if not just that he was being a dick and or that he didn't want to get prison time for it, but maybe he was afraid of, if he did speak, what might happen to him,
Right. Those that snitches get stitches is the common
right.
phrase
or end
now.
up in ditches. Right. So, don't rat out your friends, right? I'm not a rat. That's what everyone says when you're watching those movies, like, I'm not a rat. I'm not going to rat on my friends. But, what's funny though, is generally most of them do turn on their friends at some point, But Mark Stebbins' family even goes so far as to file a lawsuit against Lamborghini in 2007. They were seeking $250,000 in a wrongful death lawsuit that alleged that Lamborghini abducted and sexually assaulted, held captive, and took Mark's life. The family claimed that the money was not the reason for filing suit. The suit was supposed to be to force a bigger investigation into the deaths of the children. The suit did spark interest from Timothy's family, and his brother Chris and father Barry tried to use this lawsuit to force the Michigan police to release sealed information on the other suspects of the ring. And we're going to be discussing the other suspects in the ring right after this commercial break.
Don't go anywhere. The Good Wives will be right back.
So you often hear and see us good wives sipping a glass of wine. And one of our favorite wine clubs is California Wine Club. California Wine Club only works with small wineries, and they hand select 2 bottles of wine each month and ship them straight to your door. Now you don't even have to go to the liquor store to have a sip of bubbly with us. How cool is that?
We absolutely love hearing from our listeners, and we'd like to invite you to send us a question for us to answer or a case you'd like us to cover. You can drop us an email at goodwivesdish@gmail.com, and we might feature it in one of our next episodes and give you a shout out. Right now, we are also hosting our #LoveWins Scholarship Fund. If you're a college-age student who would like to enter, send us a 30-second video telling us about how you lead with love. Email your entry to us with a little bio about yourself and your educational goals. And if you'd like to learn more about our #LoveWins campaign for peace, merchandise, or donation details, go check out our informational video on youtube.com/murderbydesign. We look forward to hearing from you.
So another suspect was Gregory Green. He became a known suspect when the King family received the police files in December of 2010. 2010, that's like a long time later.
Yeah, I'm astounded it took them that long to be able to get the files. And how upsetting for the family.
That's so upsetting for the family to know that those files were there for that long and not to be able to get them.
And we hear that so often in cases like that you can't get the information, that the family can't get, when it's going on and on and on and on, especially if it's like an ongoing investigation. If they keep it being an ongoing investigation, then you're at the mercy of whether or not the police department and the courthouse wants to go ahead and release anything to you. Now, you might be able to get something released on a case that maybe is related, but if it's an open case, they are under no obligation to share a damn thing with you. And we've run into that in many cases that we've looked into.
Right.
Yep.
So Green spent a lot of time in and out of California and had a long list of pedophile convictions. There was even one case where he thought one of his victims was dead and he dropped him off at a hospital. But fortunately for the child, he survived. So I guess Green served his sentence out in California and then returned to his hometown of Flint, Michigan, and hooked up with a friend, Christopher Bush. Bush will be another suspect. He's the fourth suspect in all of it. So we'll talk more about him as well.
Yeah.
But they were both, Bush and Green both, were charged in a pedophile case in, I think it's Genesee County?
I think so too.
Michigan. Yeah. And Bush got probation and Green was sentenced to life in prison for violating the same child. That's two very vastly different sentences for the exact same charge against the exact same child.
And we're going to talk about why that is, because Bush, like I said, he's very key to all of this in who he is and what he does. So, yeah. In driving from Alma to Flint on January 28, 1977, Bush stated that Green and he planned to have one of them get a day job and the other a night job so that they could have someone present with a potential future victim. Bush did not answer when asked what they planned on doing with this child once they were finished with the child. So, I mean, that's clearly starting like a beginnings of, like we said, a pedophile ring here where they're trading off and they're going to bring in friends and they're going to, somebody's going to watch them during the day and somebody's going to watch this child during the night. And they're talking about it and what happened.
And it's crazy to me because, I mean, obviously my mind doesn't work that way, but they're planning these abductions ahead of time. And I, in wanting to be naive to the ugliness of the world, I would want and hope that child abductions were something of an act of convenience or an opportunity presents itself kind of thing. And it's so heartbreaking as a mom myself to know that.
When you download the Baker's app, you have easy access to savings every day. Get the most out of weekly sales and receive personalized coupons to save on your favorite items, all while earning 1 fuel point for every $1 spent. Baker's makes it easy to save while you shop, whether it's in-store or online, so you get the most value out of every trip, every time. Download the Baker's app now to save big on your next purchase. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Must have a digital account to redeem offers. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.
These things are so well thought out in advance.
Yes, many of them are.
And
right?
it's just heartbreaking to see that, and then to have them admit that. It's heartbreaking for any parent to even know that's a thing going on.
And it's, I read a lot of true crime stuff. And one of my favorite authors, obviously, is John Douglas. He's done amazing things for even investigations. He's the original Mindhunter. So I love reading all of his stuff. And I just read his latest book, The Killer Across the Table. Incredible book, by the way. If you have not picked it up, it's super, super good. I actually think it's better than his Mindhunter book, or I think it's better than most of his books. And all of his books are great, but I think that one's the best. But in that one, like Tori was saying, you'd like to think that it's an act of something of convenience, which in several of the cases he talks about in there, like McGowan, it was the little girl came up, knocked on his door, and she was just delivering the Girl Scout cookies that his mother had ordered. And so she was just dropping it off. And this was back in the time period where, the Girl Scouts went from door to door and knocked on the door and sold Girl Scout cookies. But she was dropping these off and her mother let her do it, because it was neighborhood kid, neighborhood that she lived in. And he made a decision that whoever knocked on that door next was dying. And so that one was an opportunity of convenience. But then there's other cases in that book that he talks about, like Condro, who actually actually, killed his friends' children, and not just once, but twice, and then, helps look for them and everything. So it's not always like we would like to believe that it's, I think a lot of times the kids are stalked, and it's not just an opportunity of convenience. We think about that in the Delphi murders that we're working on a documentary right now, trying to put together. Those girls, they went missing from the bridge, and we think about it, and that definitely had to have been a planned attack. Now, I don't know if he stalked those girls before, but it definitely was a planned thing. Like, I don't think that was just an opportunistic thing. I think he was laying in wait and waiting for the right opportunity to come along. But I definitely think he knew what he was doing, and he was ready and waiting for this exactly. And like you said, these are planned. These are so planned out, and what they thought of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. It wasn't just, let's grab some kids and, oh, fuck, what do we do now? So Green was questioned in Flint on January 27th and 28th of 1977. And at that time, he repeatedly claimed that Bush had killed Mark Stebbins. However, there are no reports that he was separately questioned regarding this claim. And and Bush keeps coming up, and you're going to figure out why he is not questioned, why he gets probation, why. And I truly believe that this is a case where an influential family was able to bury the fact that their family member was a child killer, and it's really upsetting and concerning that law enforcement went along with it at the time. And it makes you wonder, again, was there some involvement with some police officers in this? It's not, we don't like to think of that. I'm a 100% back the blue type of person, but we have talked about in the past that, there are bad apples. The Golden State Killer was a police officer during the times that he was the East Area rapist. It does happen. It's sad to think of, but it does happen. And it's a hard pill to swallow. And that's one of the reasons why we're so involved in what we're doing with, the hashtag Love Wins and Christina's Gale Force, the good apples of law enforcement being able to come out and speak out about things that are inappropriate that they see within their own, force in their own communities. And it's something that's very dear to our heart. But going back to this case, after Green died, a former cellmate recalled discussing the Oakland County Child Killer case with Green. And however, the Michigan State Police reports do not discuss the contents of these discussions, the police reports indicate that Green was continuously in jail after January 28, 1977. And if this is true, then he could not have personally been involved in the later murders. So he's only, suspect of basically with involvement with Mark Stebbins and things like that, or just in general being connected to Bush and Sloan and all of them. So we're going to get now into Christopher Bush, which I believe is, the main ringleader in all of this. Inside of the small group of these people, when you look at the outer layings, when we get into, North Fox Island and stuff, there's going to be some more bigger people, bigger players in this. But I definitely think Bush is a huge part of this.
So Bush was the son of H. Lee Bush, a General Motors vice president who died at the age of 90 in 2002. And Bush was able to avoid ever spending a day in prison for any of these cases or the other child pornography case that he was convicted of. And it is largely suspected that it was because of his father's involvement. So Bush pled guilty to 4 child sexual criminal cases without spending one day in jail. The Michigan State Police report indicates that he was active at North Fox Island, which, as we said before, we'll be discussing in great detail in episode 3. And J. Reuben Appelman speaks quite a bit about it in his interview with us.
That just pisses me off. How are you found guilty of 4 child sexual criminal cases? I'm not even talking about this stuff. Like, okay, fine, you can't pin him for the murders or whatever, but he actually pleads guilty to 4 child sexual criminal cases, and he does no time in jail? What the fuck?
Sounds like a good old case of affluenza to me, Fancy.
Ugh, that's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a thing, but it's not a thing.
Yes.
Oh, it just pisses me off. It pisses me off. That makes, it makes me think of that Brock frickin' Turner kid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's not destroy his life. Oh, fuck you. He destroyed hers.
Yep.
And he's going to do it again. I'm sorry. He gets a slap on the wrist. He's going to do it again. And this is a prime case right here. Oh, he does probation for 4 child sexual criminal cases. But you don't think he's going to continue doing what he's doing? They can't stop. It's not like, and this is currently going on right now. There's a movement for trying to include people with this kind of, affliction, or affinity for something, that they are supposed to be accepted somehow, and it's just love. Nobody can determine what love is, and blah, 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 and they should be accepted into the LGBTQ, movement because they are another alternative lifestyle. Are you fucking kidding me? No, they are sick, gross people who prey on children.
Yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, you can only have a loving relationship with someone who's able to consent to that loving relationship, and a child cannot consent to any relationship with an adult. So that whole thing, when I see, it just makes my stomach sick when I see that.
Yeah. And you think about it, and I'm like, who are these people? I watched these 2 women do like these TED Talks on it, and I was like, who are you? Don't you have sisters or brothers or children or nieces or nephews? Would you want them, somebody that you love, a child that you love, to be preyed upon by these people? What is wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? But the police report made reference to Christopher Bush having a suitcase of pornographic photographs on North Fox Island, and he was not indicted for his possession of these pictures. Now, we all know that each one of those pictures should have carried its own case, every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
That they each picture is supposed to be charged as its own thing. And he didn't even get charged for even one pornographic photograph that he's carrying around in a suitcase. And what do you think is happening when he's carrying around this stuff in a suitcase? Perhaps he's selling children? I don't know. I'm just making a leap there. But 1 month after Bush was released, Tim King was abducted and murdered in March 1977. And this was the last known Oakland County Child Killer murder. So Timothy is the last one, and I think that I don't think that is a coincidence. I'm sorry. Bush gets out of jail, and then Tim King is abducted 1 month later in the same area under the same MO. No, you can't tell me that that's not connected.
No, I don't think it's a coincidence either. I mean, either that or he was a very, very convenient fall guy that they waited for him to get out to pin something else on him, to keep the eyes and suspicion off of the pedo ring or anything else going on.
Mm-hmm. And they knew he was going to skip. He's going to skip out. So
right,
he's got the lawyer. He's got the money to skip out.
They already know he's going to get away with things. So why not pin everything on him? And he may have even been a willing fall guy, knowing that, hey guys, I'm going to get away with this. Let's get the suspicion off us, and let's keep this going.
So Bush had access to a secluded family cabin on S Lake. And during the angst-ridden 6 days that Tim King was missing, a neighbor aware of Bush's history of pedophilia called the police to report that Bush was cavorting at the cabin with minors. Although such circumstances would likely have been a violation of the terms of Bush's probation on the earlier sex charges, there's no evidence that law enforcement ever investigated that tip from the neighbor.
See, this infuriates me. Like, okay, so you tell me that you have 18,000 tips that you go out and you investigate, but you're not going to investigate this one? Why? What are we covering up, guys? Is it politicians? Is this an Epstein situation where, it's so many people that are in highfalutin, types of government or police or judges or celebrities? What in the hell is going on here? Because this is gross negligence in not investigating these tips, and giving him probation. Are you shitting me? So the Bush family owned a white Welsh Terrier, and white animal hairs were reportedly found on the clothes of all 4 of the Oakland County Child Killer victims. And so on November 20th, 1978, Bush was found dead at the age of 27 in his family's mansion in Bloomfield Hills, and there was 1 bullet hole between his eyes. Everything screamed setup and murder, not suicide. But Bush purportedly shot himself in the head with a rifle, and yet when found, he was wrapped tightly in a blanket, and there was a lack of measurable gunshot residue on his hands. So again, we're talking about this does not look like suicide. This actually looks like murder, and probably because either something was closing in on them or he was going to start to tell some stuff that he knew. But I mean, it just irritates the shit out of me here.
When you download the Baker's app, you have easy access to savings every day. Get the most out of weekly sales and receive personalized coupons to save on your favorite items, all while earning 1 fuel point for every $1 spent. Baker's makes it easy to save while you shop, whether it's in-store or online, so you get the most value out of every trip, every time. Download the Baker's app now to save big on your next purchase. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Must have a digital account to redeem offers. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.
At Baker's, we know the minute a tomato is picked, the fresh timer starts. The sooner we get our produce to you, the fresher it is. That's why we've shortened the time from harvest to home for our tasty tomatoes, strawberries, and salads. So no matter how you shop, you have more time with your fresh produce. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Yeah, it drives you crazy when something is like so obviously wrong and it gets ignored. Yeah. I can't imagine for the families. Like I've had people close to me. I had someone murdered and the person was arrested within 24 hours. He's now doing with no possibility of parole ever. And when I think about it, it still breaks my heart every single day. But we know that person is paying for it. We know where he is. He's never coming home. He will never set foot outside of a prison in his life. So to know that these are children and the case is just so there where it's solvable and nothing happens for years and years and years. And that kills me inside. Like that, I can't even imagine never getting any kind of justice, even when it seems like, look, I mean, come on, it's pretty obvious what's happening here, and nothing happens.
Right. And I don't think it ends here either. Most of these guys end up in jail for various reasons. Obviously Bush dies. Bush dies, stuff stops. So that makes it interesting to me. But I think that, I don't think it stops here. I think these are just the kids that there was focus on because of them dying, and being found. But how many other kids do you think are still missing because of this? How many other kids do you think were molested and returned home? When you get into the North Fox Island, that's what you hear. That was not a camp. It was a pedo ring, and that's all the kids were there for, was that. So I don't think it ends here with Chris being killed or killing himself one way or the other. I think that was just, the way that it ended for maybe this specific MO, because I see this being a larger case, but obviously these children at least were placed, all 4 were placed by the same person because of how the care of the body, and I don't know if somebody was called in as a fixer, like, okay, we're done with this child, we've killed it, can you come in and wash it and clean it so that we don't have any DNA? And whoever that person was had a very big obsession with cleanliness and having the children, because not just washing away evidence, the fact that their bodies were pressed, and their clothes were finely pressed and they were laid out in a specific way with care and things, it tells me that is a specific psychotic, that specific killer or placer was.
Well, it made me wonder when I heard that, and every suspect that we've seen is a man so far, but that made me question Was there a woman involved? Because
I
that's
thought the same thing.
that maternal instinct comes in, you know, and it made me question that. Like, is there a woman that they haven't even suspected that's involved in this? She's the one that placed them because of the care that was taken, even with the last meal. Like, you know, how many serial killers really care? Like, oh, that's his fate, I'm going to make sure, unless it was done as like
a taunt.
Yeah, that's one thing. But when you look at the way the bodies were cared for, when, you know, in the way they were placed, it makes you wonder, was that more of a motherly thing? Like, wow, he's going to die. Let me, you know, I know this is his favorite meal. Let me give him his favorite meal before he dies. And was that where, you know, that care of the bodies came in? So that was something I questioned, if there was a woman involved in this circle. Which wouldn't surprise me these days, unfortunately.
Oh no, you know, you'd like to think that women won't do that, but I mean, obviously, we're seeing it more and more that there are women that are, you know, that are involved in these types of things. We're seeing it right now with Vanessa Gillian. You know, the girlfriend is being, you know, is a suspect in what happened to her, and she laid it out straight up. You know, and we looked at Karla Homolka, you know, the Ken and Barbie killers. It's not unheard of. And I think it happens more often than people are even willing to admit. I think a lot of times the female suspects that could have had something to do with it sometimes get overlooked, and they just focus on the guy, you know, and there may be a wife, a girlfriend, or whatever that was complicit or forced, you know, either way, into taking part in some of this. But in this suicide, there were several items present that seemed staged. Like the ligatures were placed sloppily on the floor of what otherwise was a clean room. There were shotgun shells of the same caliber that killed Jill Robinson. And last, there's this hand-drawn picture of a child screaming, hanging on the wall. And the boy, I mean, had an uncanny resemblance to Mark Stebbins. So the boy in the drawing has been, you know, it was mid-scream, and his face is all contorted and in terror, and his hood was drawn up just like Mark Stebbins had been when his sexually defiled body was dumped in the snow and covered parking lot 2 years earlier. So I feel like that's all, like, that was to indicate that Bush was involved in some way. And maybe stop looking at all of the rest of us, you know. He's dead now, so don't look anymore. He's dead. So, you know, which is exactly what ends up happening. You know, they like Tori said earlier, they decided, well, we know who it is. We know who our man is. So we don't need to look anymore. But it's so ignorant to not go looking for the rest of these, you know, co-conspirators, you know, and it's upsetting. But the task force is who was called out to investigate Bush's death, which I think that's extremely suspect, and are who determined it was a suicide and not a murder by the other members of the pedophile ring, as many people suspect. So they said that others murdered him because he was sloppy and he was making many mistakes. And 3 weeks after Bush's death, the task force is disbanded. Come on, is that not suspicious? Like, seriously?
Yeah, the whole thing is just the setup of the scene, the wrapped in a blanket. That, I don't know.
That's so weird.
Have you ever heard that before? Before someone killed themselves, they wrapped themselves tightly in a blanket.
In a blanket? No.
Very strange.
I mean, he's tightly wrapped. How is he going to be able to work a shotgun?
Yeah.
Right. Like, a shotgun takes some you know, a certain amount of agility, right? I mean,
right.
I don't know.
And then to have the task force disbanded so quickly afterwards, like, oh, it's said and done. Let's wrap this up and be done with it. Like, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, is it just seems too fitting. It's too perfectly wrapped up like a nice little blanket, you know?
Right. So in recent years, there's been hairs found on Christine's body that was a mitochondrial DNA match to the fifth person in this that we talked about earlier, which was Vincent James Gunnels. And Gunnels was 16 at the time of the Oakland County Child Killing murders, and was one of the boys the Bush was convicted of molesting. So those 4 charges that he did, that the probation on, one of those was Gunnels. So Vincent is probably one of the most interesting of all the suspects in this case, as he was clearly a victim as well. So he was 15 and 16 at the time of these specific murders occurred. He was friends with both Bush and Green and was often seen riding around with them at the time. And he even admits he was in their car hundreds of times. And this car is one of the cars that fits the descriptions of some of the vehicles that were identified as vehicles that the children got into.
And see, that's also very disturbing, is that he was friends with Bush and Green when Bush admitted to molesting him. Like, if that was going on, why would he stay friends with them? And what was that connection that kept him so close to them after he was a victim himself?
Right, and that's why I said he was probably one of the procurers, because that's what happens. He was molested by them, and they convinced him, that, hey, no, whatever. And he's screwed up for life. That kid is messed up. He's, and we see that type of thing. And that's one of the things that, like, I remembered seeing a movie, and I don't know if it was actually this case or if it was based on this case, but it was a movie like that, where the kid was hanging around the people that had molested him earlier, and he just kept hanging around, and then he would go out and get kids and bring them back to them. And that's just even more disturbing, that this kid has been so scarred by these men that now he sees them as his friends and is continuing the cycle for them. That's disturbing.
It's just like they groomed him.
And
brainwashed him. Yeah,
brainwashed him into, now he's a sexual deviant, and he doesn't understand his sexual deviancy. So now, he's staying with the people that created that sexual deviancy, and that's just awful. So Bush was identified as a suspect in 2009 when the hairs on Christine's body came up as a match to the mitochondrial DNA to Gunnels. Gunnels was administered a polygraph at that time. He was asked, in addition to the control questions, just 3 questions. And they were: did you participate in any way in the killing of Christine Mihalik? Number 2 was, do you know for sure who killed Christine Mihalik? And 3 was, did you have any physical contact with Christine Mihalik? Now, he said that he doesn't know who she is. He's never seen her. He's never had contact. And he doesn't know how those hairs were transmitted to her. Unless, it was something else. But he failed all aspects of the polygraph. He became more agitated as time went on. At first, he was very calm, and, he just kind of answered everything very matter-of-factly. But as they started to push more into it, he became more agitated. And when he was further questioned by detectives, he got very upset. And he claimed he never knew Christine, had not been present during her murder, nothing. But strangely, Gunnels was cleared as a suspect without any further explanation. So that's what happens. The family gets a call that says, okay, well, we have a guy that we think did it. And they're like, oh, great, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, no, we're sorry, we cleared him.
And you can't help but wonder if that him being cleared so quickly and so cleanly had anything to do with the fact that he was associated with Bush, who also had everything cleared so quickly and so cleanly. If they hadn't had their connection themselves, that close connection, if he hadn't been a victim himself, then first of all, he probably wouldn't have been involved. But had it been anybody else that he had been a victim of, he wouldn't have been cleared because he wouldn't have had that connection to Bush. That's my thoughts on it.
Well, I also think maybe they didn't want to admit that a kid that had been a victim, that they could have stopped this. When he when Bush was connected to Gunnels and he was convicted of molesting Gunnels years and years prior to this, then if they had done something about it then perhaps these murders would not have happened, or they would have saved other children.
Timothy King's father has come out and said Bush was in custody. Bush was questioned. Bush had all these things going on. And then you released him, and my son was taken and murdered.
Right.
And so he's even spoken out and said, could you have stopped this? Could my son have been saved if you had just done your job?
Don't go anywhere. The Good Wives will be right back. Every great podcast needs a great website. Currently, our mother company, Mad Ginger Entertainment, is building their website using Bluehost. Bluehost is one of the best and most affordable web hosting platforms available. Plans start as low as $2.95 a month, and you can even integrate it with WordPress. So if you need your own website or affordable web hosting, grab our discount link in the description and get your podcast a bigger presence online at low costs.
Hey guys, it's me, Cajun Mama Ty, and I'm coming back to you with a Cajun word or phrase of the day. So, as you know, in the Cajun community, we have different names for different people in our families. So, like we talked about before, we had Mama, Papa for Mama and Daddy. Mama, Papa, Grandma, Grandpa for Grandma and Grandpa. And so today we're going to talk about what we call our aunts and our uncles. So in the Cajun community, you will find that everybody, you're given a name. You know, like my name is Titania, but nobody knows me by Titania. Everybody knows me by Ty. And everyone in my family has a given name, but they also have a nickname, and the nickname is what they go by. So, and aunts and uncles, an aunt in French is called a tante. So I have a tante Mon, and her real name is Simone, but we call her Tante Mon because we shortened her name. And so her brothers and sisters call her Mon, which is short for Simone. So that is how we go about in the Cajun community. We kind of find a short way for everybody. The next thing we want to talk about is uncles. You know, our uncles are called, an uncle is called an oncle in French, but we call our uncles nonc, because mon oncle would be my uncle. So we just shorten it and we say nonc. So we have nonc T, nonc Joe, nonc Larry, you know, so we have a bunch of different noncs. So we shorten the name, and then we shorten their surname as well, you know, their real name as well. So yeah, in the Cajun community, we have many different names for our family and friends, and that's just how it is. But like I said, today's lesson is aunt, which is tante, and uncle, which is mononc, which is nonc, we call him. So let's head back to the Good Wives, and they'll continue talking about the case.
So tonight we've taken you through the suspects. They are strange at best. It's frustrating to see how much evidence points to these men being not only responsible for these children's murders, but the obvious molestation of many other children. Some are in prison for other convictions regarding pedophilia and child pornography rings, and that, among other things, is what we will discuss in the next episode. Now that you've heard about the victims and the suspects, it's a good time to listen to our bonus interview with our author, J. Reuben Appelman. You might also like to grab his book, which is our book of the month, called The Kill Jar. So we put a link to The Kill Jar on our Instagram. It's the book of the month, and we have it up there. We can have discussions about it underneath that picture of the book on our Instagram with you guys. If you have questions or want to know more things or discuss it, feel free to go ahead and do it there. And we'll be able to engage with you guys if you have questions or anything else. So that's over on our Instagram, instagram.com/truecrimewives. So, but we've discussed a lot tonight. I definitely think this is not the only suspects. I think this is a much larger story than this.
I agree, and I think this case is one of the ones that frustrate me probably the most because it's children involved, and it's pretty clear that people went out of their way to protect certain people, and that just it just eats me up inside knowing that these are kids, their families still have no justice. I mean, look at how, people as parents, as they're getting older, I'm sure that's something that goes through their head every day is, are we ever going to get any closure while we're still on this earth? And it's so sad. It's so heartbreaking to me.
In Children of the Snow, one of the fathers, I think it was Timothy King's father. It could have been Mark Stebbins' father. I don't know which one it is. But they were asking about, do you feel like there's a sense of urgency, or is time running out? And he said, well, time's running out for me. I'm 87. And
that was Tim's dad.
It was Tim's dad. That's what I thought. I thought it was Tim's dad. And his sister, his sister is, I think she's my age and or very close to my age. And it's hard to think about this family for almost 40 years, 40 years not having any closure. It's sad, and he may die and never have closure. The mothers have died. The family is going away, and they may never have justice for their child. I mean, if you believe in God, then maybe you believe that they get justice by reuniting with them in heaven. But you would like to think that the people, not even put them in prison. I mean, most of them are dead, but at least they would have answers. They would have some sort of information. And I watched something the other day, and it made me think. We always talk about closure, for the families or whatever. And one mother said, I'm never going to have closure. It doesn't matter what you do. My daughter is gone. There's no closure for that. My child is gone. And I don't remember if that was this case or if it was another case, but it really made me think about that, and the fact that we always talk about that closure. And really more what you need to be talking about is justice. Are the right people, and beyond that is these 4 kids are important, but what about all the other kids that probably went through something because these guys were not taken off the streets? And there are, at any given time, there's over 600,000 missing people in our country every day, every year. And I think 80 to 90% of those are children. And as things come out right now with Epstein and several other cases that we're seeing, we're realizing that children are going missing and there are no answers. And people are not enraged, and people are not out there, talking about it. It's just something we don't talk about because it's hard to talk about, but it needs to be talked about.
Thanks so much for tuning in and dishing true crime with the Good Wives.
Don't forget to join our Patreon member club to get the full recipe shared tonight, inside documents and pictures from the case, bonus mini podcast episodes, live YouTube discussion, and an exclusive invitation to our discussion group on Facebook, and get some amazing Good Wives merch.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at True Crime Wives. And for more inside information, check us out on YouTube at Murder by Design, where we're currently talking about a few different true crime cases, from bullying murders to serial killers. We dish it all.
Have a good one from the Good Wives, serving up true crime, one dish at a time.
Hello and welcome to The Baker's Show. At Baker's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big. Because when you order online through the Baker's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in-store, with no hidden fees or markups. So no matter how you shop, you'll always save big at Baker's. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Save big on your favorites with the Buy 5 or More, Save $1 each sale. Simply buy 5 or more participating items and save $1 each with your card. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Calling all night owls. When you've got the After Dark munchies, Amigos is here for you to satisfy your late night cravings. Put your hunger to bed with Amigos' new 8 to close specials. Only $5 for 2 crisp meat burritos, 2 cheesy burritos, or 1 of each, for those who can't decide. You heard right, 2 of our favorite late night sellers, crisp meats or cheesies for just $5. Head to Amigos, where flavor never sleeps.